Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. Nira Elowen stood barefoot on the cold stone dais, while laughter rippled through Ember-Crest Feast Hall like thrown knives. Her wrists shook, not from fear, but from the iron chain of humiliation clasped around her name. Rejected Omega, joke singer. Someone shoved a cracked lute into her hands, its strings loose, its wood smelling of ash and old wine. Alpha King Thorn Valric sat above her, draped in black fur and silver rings, his expression carved from stone. Beside him, Kalis Morwen smiled politely, eyes sharp as frost. Nira felt every stare peel her skin. She remembered being dragged here, told to sing because even broken things can make noise. The hall glowed with firelight, banners snapping, meat steaming, power thick as smoke. Her wolf curled inside her ribs, small and wounded. Then someone shouted, "Sing, little Omega," and laughter thundered again. Nira lifted her chin. She opened her mouth, meaning to survive. What came out was grief. One clear note sliced the hall, ancient and aching, a sound not taught, not learned. Thorn's fingers tightened on his throne. The fires guttered. Silence fell, and the Alpha King felt something wake. Inside him, destiny stirred. Dark, undeniable, furious, alive now. Hours earlier, before the feast drums began, Nira had been cleaning blood from the butcher's stones behind Hollowpine Clan's kitchens. The sky was gray, heavy, pressing down like a held breath. She lived on scraps, slept near roots, and learned to stay invisible. Her rejection had come years before, swift and public, when her wolf failed to rise at claiming age. Since then, laughter followed her like a curse. Still, she sang quietly when alone, songs her mother Lysanne once hummed while braiding her hair. Those songs carried warmth, memory, and warnings. When the summons arrived, sealed with Grimfall Sovereignty's mark, Nira knew it meant trouble. Omegas were not invited to feasts unless they were servants or sport. Jarek Voss delivered the order without meeting her eyes. "You'll sing," he said flatly, as if reading weather. No reason given, no choice offered. As she washed her hands, Nira felt her wolf stir uneasy, whispering of old blood and older promises. She ignored it. Survival taught her silence. Yet as the sun sank and horns echoed across the plains, a feeling followed her footsteps, heavy and watching, as if fate had already chosen its seat. Tonight would rewrite rules she knew. Thorn Valric had ruled Grimfall Sovereignty for 7 winters, feared for his blade and admired for restraint. He did not laugh during feasts. He watched. He listened. That night, he expected politics, blood, oaths, and noise. He did not expect the Omega. When Nira was dragged forward, he felt irritation, then boredom. Kalis leaned close, whispering that it was tradition to mock the weak. Thorn allowed it because kings sometimes permitted cruelty to measure loyalty. But when Nira sang, the sound struck him behind the eyes. It was the song of a dying wolf calling the moon, of a mother bleeding in snow, of a promise broken by cowardice. His beast roared awake, slamming against old chains. Images flashed, frostlit forests, a woman kneeling, silver fire in her throat. Thorn tasted iron. He stood without meaning to, cup shattering in his grip. Around him, warriors froze. The song wrapped the hall, bending flame, cracking stone. Thorn realized with sudden terror that this Omega carried something the throne had been waiting for. And if others sensed it too, blood would follow. Power like this invited hunters, traitors, wars, and choices that would tear packs, crowns, and hearts apart, forever without mercy. Nira sang until her lungs burned and her knees trembled, yet the song carried her, not the other way around. She did not see the Alpha King stand. She saw only memories spilling free. Her mother singing beside a dying fire, her pack turning away. The moment of rejection, cold hands, colder eyes. The melody rose, then broke, revealing truth hidden in bone. When the final note faded, silence roared louder than drums. Nira lowered her head, waiting for punishment. Instead, Thorn's voice cut the air. Rough, shaken, he demanded her name. Gasps answered before she could speak. Kalis stiffened, smile cracking. Nira whispered who she was, each word a wound. Thorn descended the steps, stopping inches away. Power rolled from him, dangerous and alive. He smelled her fear, her strength, her bloodline. "Who taught you that song?" he asked. Nira answered with honesty, because lies felt impossible. She spoke of Lysanne, of loss, of hiding. Something in Thorn's eyes shifted like a door opening. He ordered the feast ended, guards moved. Whispers erupted. Nira realized the joke was over. Something far worse, or far greater, had begun. The hall felt smaller, the future pressing close. Sharp, bright, merciless, awake. That night, Nira was locked in a tower room overlooking Silverhowl Plains, moonlight spilling like milk across the floor. She should have been afraid. Instead, her wolf paced, humming with strange joy. Outside, Grimfall stirred, alliances shifting like wolves in snow. Thorn stood alone in the war chamber, hands braced on maps older than his crown. The song echoed still, awakening prophecies he had buried with blood. A singer Omega, a true voice, the kind that crowned kings or destroyed them. Below, Kalis watched the tower with narrowing eyes, already planning. Power never shared itself kindly. Nira pressed her forehead to the cold glass, whispering her mother's name. She did not know why the Alpha King listened, or why her voice held fire. She knew only this: the world had heard her. Somewhere deep, a thread had snapped tight. Fate had leaned in, and by dawn, nothing in Grimfall's sovereignty would remain untouched, especially the heart of the Alpha King. Chains would break, lies would surface, blood would be demanded, and love, unwanted and unstoppable, would rise from the ruins to challenge every law written by fear. The song had chosen its king, whether he wished it or not, tonight, irrevocably. Morning crept into Grimfall's sovereignty like an intruder, pale and cautious, touching stone towers and frost-bitten banners. Nira woke on a narrow bed that smelled of iron and old rain. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then the silence reminded her. No pack noises, no scurrying omegas, no whispered insults, just height, space, and the distant howl of wolves greeting dawn. She sat up slowly, the events of the feast crashing back in sharp fragments, the laughter, the lute, the Alpha King's eyes. Her chest tightened. She expected guards to drag her out at any second. Instead, the door opened softly, and Ophira Kest entered, carrying a bowl of steaming broth. The healer's presence was calm, almost gentle, but her eyes searched Nira like a storm horizon. "Drink," Ophira said. "You'll need strength." Nira obeyed, hands trembling. The broth tasted of herbs and bone. "You shouldn't be here," Nira whispered. Ophira nodded. "Neither should you." Outside, the citadel stirred with rumors already running faster than wolves. The song had spread, and with it, fear. Thorn Valric had not slept. He stood on the eastern battlements as the sun climbed, jaw tight, memories clawing up from places he kept buried. His father's voice haunted him, rough and warning. The old Alpha had spoken of singers once, wolves whose voices carried magic older than law. They were dangerous. They were hunted. Thorn had dismissed it as myth until last night, when Nira sang something ancient inside. Him bowed, not in submission, but recognition. It enraged him. Kings did not kneel, not even inside themselves. Yet the pull remained, deep and unsettling. Reed and Valric joined him, boots scraping stone. "The court is restless," Ryden said. "Kalis is furious." Thorn didn't answer. He watched the plains instead, silver grass bending under wind. You brought an omega into the tower, Raiden continued carefully. That alone invites rebellion. Thorn finally turned. She's not just an omega. The words tasted like truth and threat. Raiden studied him, seeing cracks where certainty once lived. Then decide quickly, he warned, before others decide for you. By midday, the citadel buzzed like a nest struck by fire. Packs whispered in corners. Sentinels doubled patrols. Kalis Morwen moved through it all with a composed smile that did not reach her eyes. She visited the shrine room, where stone wolves watched in silence and knelt as if in prayer. Inside, her thoughts burned. She had been chosen, groomed, promised. She would not lose her future to a nameless omega with a pretty voice. When Jarek Voss appeared, she rose smoothly. Watch the tower, she instructed. I want to know who enters and who leaves. Jarek hesitated. The Alpha King. We'll thank you later. Kalis cut in softly. Jarek bowed and left. Alone, Kalis pressed her palm to the altar, feeling power hum beneath stone. She whispered an oath, not to the moon, but to herself. No singer would unmake her destiny. If the song was a weapon, she would learn to break it. Outside, clouds thickened, and the wind carried a distant echo of melody that made wolves uneasy, including hers. Naira spent the afternoon staring out the tower window, watching Silverhowl Plains stretch endlessly. Ophira returned with clean clothes, simple but warm. You are safer here than you think, the healer said, though her voice lacked conviction. Nira changed slowly, fingers brushing old scars. Why did my song do that? She asked quietly. Ophira paused. Some blood remembers, she said. Your mother hid you for a reason. Nira's heart stumbled. Before she could ask more, the door opened again. Thorn entered alone. The room seemed to shrink around him, power pressing the air flat. Naira stood instinctively, fear and anger tangling. Thorn studied her, not as king to subject, but as predator sensing equal fire. Sing again, he said. It was not a command, but a plea edged with steel. Nira shook her head. It hurts, she replied honestly. Thorn's brow furrowed. So does ruling, he said. Silence stretched, thick. Finally, he said, You will stay until I understand what you are. Nira met his gaze, voice steady despite shaking knees. I am not a thing to be understood. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. That evening, the moon rose heavy and full, casting long shadows through the citadel halls. Nira lay awake, heart racing, sensing eyes on her soul. Far below, in a hidden chamber, Kalis met with Raiden, her tone sweet, her words sharp. You feel it too, she said. The pull, the danger. Raiden did not deny it. The old prophecies, he murmured. Kalis leaned closer. Then help me end this before it begins. Above them, Nira's wolf stirred, whispering of choice, of fire, of songs meant to shatter chains. She pressed her hands to her ears, but the melody rose anyway, unbidden, curling through stone. Thorn felt it from his chambers and froze. The bond was forming whether he allowed it or not, and somewhere between tower and throne, destiny tightened its grip. By night's end, lines would be drawn. By dawn, someone would bleed, and the singer, once mocked, now held the power to crown a king or ruin him completely. Night fractured into restless pieces across Grimfall sovereignty. Nira woke gasping, fingers clawing at her chest, as if pulling herself back from deep water. The song had come again in her sleep, louder, sharper, filled with images that were not memories. A crown split in two, wolves bowing, blood on snow. She swung her legs over the bed, breathing hard, the stone floor icy beneath her feet. Outside the tower window, the moon hung low and swollen, staining the plain silver. Her wolf paced inside her, no longer small or frightened, but alert, awakened, demanding to be heard. Nira wrapped her arms around herself, whispering for it to quiet. She had survived by staying unnoticed. Power was a danger she did not know how to carry. A soft knock startled her. Ophira entered again, eyes dark with concern. You felt it too, the healer said, not asking. Nira nodded. It won't stop, she whispered. Ophira hesitated, then said quietly, Then you must learn what it is before others decide for you. The words settled like a warning carved into bone. At dawn, Thorn summoned the council, the chamber filled with alphas cloaked in fur and steel, their voices sharp as blades. Naira was not present, but her name moved through the room like smoke. Some called her a weapon, others called her a curse. Kalis sat at Thorn's right hand, posture perfect, eyes calm. When the arguing reached a roar, Thorn raised his hand. Silence fell. The singer remains under my protection, he said. Murmurs erupted instantly. Raiden leaned forward. Protection implies claim, he said carefully. Thorn's jaw tightened. It implies responsibility. Across the room, Kalis felt something crack. She spoke then, voice smooth and public. We all heard the song, she said. Power like that belongs to the crown, not a frightened Omega who doesn't understand it. Thorn met her gaze. That frightened Omega nearly brought this hall to its knees, he replied. The council shifted uneasily. Outside, thunder rolled out the sky was clear. Decisions were being made whether words admitted it or not. Thorn dismissed them, abruptly, knowing delay would only sharpen knives aimed at Nira's back. Jarek Voss followed Nira that afternoon as she was escorted into the lower gardens for air. He moved like a shadow, silent, watchful. Nira felt him before she saw him, the way prey feels the hunter's focus. She stopped near a frost-covered fountain, gripping the stone edge. Why are you watching me? She asked without turning. Jarek paused, surprised. Orders, he answered simply. Nira looked at him then. Really looked. His eyes held no cruelty, only caution. If I wanted to run, she said softly, could you stop me? Jarek studied her, then shook his head once. No, he admitted, but others would try. Nira nodded, accepting the truth. She closed her eyes, letting the cold air fill her lungs. The song stirred, pressing at her throat. When she opened her eyes again, frost had crept farther across the fountain, glittering unnaturally. Jarek took a step back. Fear flickered across his face for the first time. Naira realized with a hollow twist that even without singing, she was changing the world around her. That frightened her more than any threat. That night, Thorn came to the tower again. He did not announce himself. Naira sensed him and turned, meeting his gaze without bowing. The moonlight carved silver lines across his face, softening the hard edges. You should send me away, she said before he spoke. Thorn exhaled slowly. I tried, he admitted. Every instinct says you are danger. Nira laughed quietly, bitter. So does mine. Silence stretched, heavy but not hostile. My mother hid me, Naira continued. She said our voices were stolen once, that kings feared them. Thorn's eyes darkened. They did more than fear them, he said. They hunted them. The truth settled between them, sharp and final. Naira felt anger rise, hot and sudden. Then why keep me? She demanded. Thorn stepped closer. Because when you sang, he said, voice low, my wolf bowed, and it has never bowed to anything. The admission hung raw in the air. Nira's heart pounded. She did not know whether to run or reach for him. Instead, she whispered, That scares me. Below the tower, Kalis watched torchlight flicker against stone, her nails biting into her palms. She could feel the shift in the pack, the way wolves whispered Nira's name with awe instead of mockery. Rage burned cold and focused. She would not lose. If songs shaped kings, then silence could end them. She sent messengers into the night, to old allies and darker corners of the plains. Promises were made, deals were struck. Back in the tower, Nira lay awake, heart racing, sensing the tightening net. The song pulsed in her chest, no longer only grief, but warning. Far away, thunder answered, though no clouds gathered. By morning, Grimfall's sovereignty would face its first fracture, and Naira alone, once invisible, stood at the center of a storm that would demand blood, truth, and a choice neither Omega nor King could escape. The day broke with iron-gray skies and a wind that carried the scent of rain and unrest. Nira was escorted from the tower at first light, boots crunching over frost as Jarek led her through a narrow passage beneath the citadel. No one spoke. The silence felt staged, like the breath before a blade fell. They emerged into an old training court ringed with cracked stone and dead banners. Ophira waited there, jaw set, a bundle of herbs tucked beneath her arm. "You'll learn grounding," the healer said briskly, "or the song will burn you hollow." Nira swallowed and nodded. When she closed her eyes and breathed as instructed, the sound rose anyway, softer this time, a hum like wind through pine needles. The ground shivered. Frost traced patterns at her feet. Ophira barked for her to stop, then stared in awe. Nira opened her eyes to find Raiden watching from the archway, expression unreadable. Above them, on a high balcony, Thorn stood alone. He felt the pull again, stronger, intimate, dangerous. Below, Nira steadied herself, realizing she could shape the sound if she dared. Control, not silence, might save her, or damn them altogether forever. By midday, word spread that the Alpha King would address the pack at dusk. Wolves gathered in knots, whispering theories and fears. Some spoke of blessing, others sharpened knives. Kalis moved through the chaos like a shadow wrapped in silk, smiling where needed, listening everywhere. She found Raiden near the armory and touched his sleeve. "He's losing them," she murmured, "and you know why." Raiden looked away. "The pack feels her," he admitted. "So does he." Kalis's smile thinned. "Then help me protect Grimfall," she said, "before he binds himself to something we cannot control." Raiden hesitated, then nodded once. Later, alone, Kalis entered a sealed chamber beneath the shrine. She lit black candles and whispered, names long forbidden. The stone answered with a low hum. Power did not always sing. Sometimes it waited, patient and cruel. As she sealed the door, thunder rolled at last, rain streaking the windows like claw marks. Kalis felt calm. Whatever the singer was, she would learn fear before this ended, and fear, properly shaped, could still be used to rule. That afternoon, Thorn summoned Nira privately to the war chamber. Maps lay scattered, marked with old borders and older blood. "You will not sing tonight," he said without preamble. Nira frowned. "The pack expects—" "They expect spectacle," Thorn cut in. "I will not give them you as entertainment again." The words warmed her, then frightened her. "Then why speak?" she asked. Thorn traced a line on the map, finger pausing at Silverhow Plains. "Because if you stay, you will be claimed by this place," he said quietly. "And if you leave, others will hunt you." Nira's chest tightened. "So there is no choice?" Thorn met her eyes. "There is always choice," he said. "Only cost." He hesitated, then added, "If you remain, I will protect you, publicly." Nira laughed softly, pain-edged. "Protection looks like a cage from the inside." Thorn did not deny it. Instead, he said, "Sing for me now, only me." The request startled her. After a long breath, she hummed, low and steady. The room stilled. Thorn's wolf pressed close, reverent. Nira felt the bond tug, frightening and intimate. She stopped abruptly. "I can't," she whispered. Thorn nodded, understanding more than he wished. At dusk, the pack assembled in the lower courtyard, rain slicking stone and fur alike. Torches hissed. Thorn stepped forward, voice carrying. He spoke of old laws and new dangers, of unity and vigilance. Then he announced Nira would be placed under royal protection until further notice. The reaction was immediate. Cheers from some, snarls from others. Kalis stood rigid, fury barely, contained. Nira watched from the shadows, heart pounding. She felt eyes on her, weighing, judging. Suddenly, a sharp cry split the air. A young wolf collapsed near the fountain, clutching his throat as frost raced up his arms. Panic erupted. "Witchcraft!" someone shouted. Naira surged forward instinctively, but Ophira grabbed her arm. "It's not you," the healer hissed. Thorn knelt beside the fallen wolf, recognizing the mark burned into his skin, a sigil of silence, old and forbidden. Thorn's gaze snapped to the shrine. He rose slowly, fury controlled and lethal. "Someone has broken sacred law," he said, "and they will answer." Above the chaos, Kalis watched, face composed, heart racing. The game had begun sooner than planned. Blood would answer song, and the pack would learn what fear truly sounded like. That night, Grimfall's sovereignty did not sleep. Guards searched halls, doors slammed, accusations flew. Naira sat alone in the tower, rain drumming against stone like a heartbeat. She felt guilt coil in her gut despite innocence. Power always demanded payment. The song pulsed, restless, urging action. She pressed her palm to the glass and sang quietly. Not a weapon, but a balm. The rain softened. Somewhere below, the fallen wolf breathed easier. Thorn felt it from across the citadel and closed his eyes, relief cutting through rage. He understood then. Her voice could harm or heal, depending on the heart guiding it, and many hearts in Grimfall were dark. As midnight passed, Kalis met Raiden once more, whispers tight and urgent. "It's slipping," she said. "We must act." Above them, Nira whispered her mother's name and felt resolve settle, calm and fierce. She would not be used, not again. If the world demanded her voice, she would choose how it rang. Dawn loomed, heavy with consequence. By then, alliances would fracture, masks would fall, and the singer would step forward, not as a joke, not as prey, but as something the old laws never prepared for at all. Dawn arrived sharp and red, cutting across Grimfall sovereignty like a warning blade. Nira did not wait for guards. She dressed herself, hands steady despite the storm inside her chest. The night's events had stripped away any illusion of safety. Someone had already tried to use forbidden silence magic, and it had nearly killed an innocent wolf. That truth burned hotter than fear. When Jarek came to escort her, she met him at the door, eyes clear. "Take me to him," she said. Jarek hesitated, then nodded, sensing the shift. They crossed corridors buzzing with tension until they reached the eastern overlook, where Thorn stood watching the plains. He turned as she approached, surprise flickering, then respect. "I know who did it," Nira said without greeting. Thorn stiffened. "You're certain?" She nodded. I felt the echo. The silence wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to scare me into breaking. Thorn's jaw clenched. "Kalis," he said quietly, the name heavy with betrayal. Nira exhaled. "She's afraid," Nira replied. "Fear makes people cruel." Thorn looked at her then, truly looked, and realized she was no longer hiding. Whatever she was becoming, it would not be small. By midday, Thorn convened a private confrontation beneath the shrine, stone walls thick with old magic. Kalis arrived composed, hands folded, eyes bright with practiced innocence. Raiden stood to the side, tension etched deep. Thorn spoke plainly, laying out the evidence, the sigil, the timing. Kalis listened, then laughed softly. "You accuse me because I refuse to fear her," she said, "because I won't bow to a song." Naira stepped forward before Thorn could answer. The room chilled instantly. "You don't fear me," Naira said. "You fear losing what you think is owed to you." Kalis's smile cracked. "And you think you deserve it instead?" she snapped. Naira shook her head. "I don't want the throne. I want the killing to stop." Silence fell. Thorn watched both women, realizing the choice before him was no longer political, but moral. Kalis's wolf snarled beneath her skin. "Choose," she demanded. Thorn closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. "I choose Grimfall," he said. Guards moved. Kalis screamed, rage tearing through her composure as she was seized. The sound echoed, sharp and final. Nira felt no triumph, only sorrow. The pack reacted violently to Kalis's arrest. Some howled in outrage, others in relief. Old loyalties shattered under the weight of truth. By evening, a faction loyal to Kalis attempted to flee the citadel. weapons drawn. Blood spilled in the lower gates. Naira ran toward the chaos before anyone could stop her. She sang, not loud, not commanding, but clear and piercing. The melody cut through screams and steel, freezing wolves mid-strike, forcing them to hear. Memories flooded them. Shared hunts, shared losses, cubs raised. Together, blades lowered. The fighting slowed, then stopped. Naira's knees buckled as the song ended, exhaustion crashing in. Thorn caught her before she hit the ground, holding her as if she weighed nothing. "You could have been killed," he said fiercely. Naira met his eyes, breath shallow. "So could they," she replied. Around them, wolves stared in stunned silence. They had felt it, not control, connection, something old and binding. In that moment, Grimfall's sovereignty shifted. Power no longer sat only on the throne. It breathed, sang, and stood shaking in the Alpha King's arms. That night, Thorn stayed by Naira's side as Ophira worked to steady her. "You're burning yourself out," the healer scolded. Naira managed a weak smile. "It's better than burning everyone else." Thorn said nothing, but his hand never left hers. When Ophira finally left them alone, silence settled, intimate and fragile. "I won't cage you," Thorn said quietly. "Not as a symbol, not as a mate, not as a weapon." Naira studied him, searching for lies, finding none. "And if I leave?" she asked. Thorn swallowed. "Then I will still protect you," he said, "even if it costs me the crown." The admission cracked something open between them. Naira felt the bond hum, no longer forcing, but waiting. She leaned back against the pillows, suddenly very tired. "I don't know what I meant to be," she whispered. Thorn brushed his thumb over her knuckles, reverent. "Then we will find out," he said. "Together, if you'll allow it." Naira closed her eyes, not answering, but not pulling away. For now, that was enough. Beyond the tower, Grimfall's sovereignty mourned and rebuilt in the same breath. Kalis was bound and taken to Stonewake Ravine to await judgment. Raiden watched her go, guilt heavy as chains. The pack whispered Naira's name not as rumor, but as truth. Singer, healer, threat, hope. Naira stood once more at the tower window before dawn, Silverhowl Plains stretching endless and uncertain. She sang softly, not to command, but to listen. The land answered, subtle and warm. Behind her, Thorn approached, careful not to startle. The future loomed, sharp with choices still unpaid. War could still come. So could love. Naira turned, meeting his gaze with quiet strength. Whatever she was, whatever she would become, she would no longer be silent, and neither would the world that had tried to break her. The morning after Kalis's fall arrived with uneasy quiet, the kind that followed storms that tore roofs away, but spared lives. Naira woke before the bells, senses stretched thin. The citadel felt different, like a lung learning to breathe after long illness. She dressed and stepped into the corridor, where guards bowed without mockery. It unsettled her more than insults ever had. Respect carried expectation. In the council wing, Thorn argued with elders who feared what Naira represented. She heard fragments through stone, precedent, balance, danger. When she entered, voices died. Thorn turned, relief flashing before control returned. "They want you hidden," he said bluntly. Naira nodded. "I want answers," she replied. She spoke of her mother's warnings, of bloodlines erased, of singers hunted into whispers. The elders shifted uneasily. One finally admitted the truth. Centuries ago, singers bound packs together when kings failed. When rulers learned voices could unmake crowns, they erased them. Silence became law. Naira felt grief sharpen into resolve. "Then your law is broken," she said softly. Outside, thunder murmured agreement. Thorn watched her with dawning clarity. Grimfall was changing, and he would either guide it or be crushed beneath it entirely. By midday, the pack gathered again, not for judgment, but for reckoning. Naira stood beside Thorn on the stone dais, wind tugging her hair loose. Faces stared up at her. Warriors, omegas, elders, cubs. Fear lived there, and hope, tangled tight. Thorn raised his voice, announcing the truth of singers and the lies that buried them. Murmurs rippled, anger flaring, then confusion. Nira felt the moment teeter. She stepped forward and sang. Not a command, not grief, a story. She sang of packs sharing fire, of alphas kneeling to protect the weak, of voices lifting leaders when strength failed. Images bloomed in listeners' minds. Some wept, others dropped to their knees. The song ended softly, like snow settling. Silence followed, not empty, but full. When Nira opened her eyes, the pack had shifted. Not united, not healed, but listening. That was enough. Thorn exhaled, awe and fear colliding. He realized then that ruling beside her would mean surrendering control. True leadership would demand trust, and trust terrified him more than any blade ever had before. The backlash came at dusk. A splinter group loyal to old laws struck from the outer barracks, setting fires and shouting curses. Nira smelled smoke before screams. She ran toward it, heart hammering. Thorn followed without hesitation. Steel clashed. Wolves shifted. Chaos surged. Nira climbed a broken wall and sang into the smoke, voice raw and bright. The flames bent away, guttering as if ashamed. But the effort tore at her chest. A bolt of pain dropped her to her knees. Thorn caught her, shielding her as an arrow shattered against stone. Rage exploded through him. He fought with ferocity the pack had never seen, driving attackers back until the last fled into night. When silence returned, Nira lay pale and shaking. Ophira rushed in, hands glowing with healing warmth. "You are not endless," the healer scolded. Nira smiled weakly. "Neither is hate," she whispered. Thorn held her, blood on his hands, fear naked in his eyes. He understood now. Protecting her meant protecting the future she sang into being, even if it cost him everything he had been taught to value. That night, Thorn stayed awake beside Nira, as rain washed smoke from stone. She drifted in and out, murmuring fragments of melody and memory. He listened, learning her cadence, her pain. He realized his desire was no longer possessive. It was reverent. At dawn, Nira woke clearer, strength returning slowly. "I can't keep doing this alone," she said. Thorn nodded. "You won't," he replied. He offered her a choice. Not a claim, not a crown, but partnership. She would speak for the voiceless. He would enforce what she awakened. Law and song, bound by consent. Nira considered, wolf humming approval. "No cage," she said. "No silence." Thorn bowed his head. "No chains," he agreed. The bond settled between them, quiet and fierce. No blaze, no burn. Just alignment. Outside, Grimfall sovereignty stirred, scarred but alive. The old order cracked. Something truer pressed through. And for the first time since the feast, Nira felt hope without fear wrapped around it. Change was still dangerous, but it was no longer hers to face alone, ever again. As the sun climbed, word spread of a new council forming. Voices from every rank invited. Some resisted, others leaned in. Nira stood on the tower balcony, wind cool against her skin, and sang a final note of the morning. Testing the air, it answered gently. Thorn joined her, standing not above, but beside. Below them, Grimfall waited, uncertain, watching. The future would not be gentle. Enemies would rise beyond the plains. The old world would claw back. But something irreversible had begun. Nira Alowan, once mocked, once hidden, had reshaped the axis of power with nothing but truth and sound. She did not know how far it would go, only that she would walk forward with eyes open and voice unbroken. And the Alpha King, who had laughed at her humiliation, now listened for her breath before making every choice that mattered. The calm after rebellion never lasted. Nira sensed it before anyone spoke it aloud. Grimfall sovereignty breathed like a wounded animal, alive, dangerous, unpredictable. Councils met daily now, voices clashing, old scars reopening. Nira attended some, stood silent in others, learning the shape of power without letting it harden her. She noticed who listened and who watched with narrowed eyes. One name kept returning in whispers from border scouts: Stonewake Ravine. Kalis had not been quiet in exile. Loyalists gathered there, feeding on bitterness and old fear. Nira felt it each night, a pressure behind her ribs, like a song being twisted into a scream. She told Thorn at dawn, fingers clenched around the balcony stone. "She's not done," Nira said. Thorn nodded grimly. "Neither are the old laws," he replied. He ordered patrols strengthened, but unease lingered. Nira's wolf paced, restless. Power unused grew sharp. She feared what would happen if silence was forced again. The future pressed close, demanding movement, not waiting. The warning came at midday in blood and ash. A messenger staggered. Into the lower courtyard, arrow buried deep in his side, clutching a broken banner marked with Grimfall's sigil burned black. "Stonewake," he gasped before collapsing. Chaos erupted. Thorn barked orders, warriors surged. Nira felt the song rise instinctively, but she held it back, remembering Ophira's warnings. Control mattered now more than strength. "They want you," Thorn said quietly, gripping her shoulders. "This is bait." Nira met his gaze, fear flickering but not ruling. "Then stop running," she said. "If they fear my voice, let them hear it clearly." Thorn hesitated, torn between instinct to shield and duty to lead. Finally, he nodded. "We go together," he said. It was not command. It was promise. As preparations began, Raiden approached Nira, eyes heavy with regret. "Kalis knows the old rites," he warned. "She'll twist them if she can." Nira swallowed, steadying herself. "Then I won't sing alone," she replied. The song no longer belonged only to her. The journey to Stonewake Ravine cut through barren land where the earth remembered old wars. Wind howled through broken stone like mourning. Nira rode beside Thorn, silence stretching between them, not empty but charged. She felt the bond hum, no longer tugging, simply present, grounding. As dusk fell, fires appeared ahead, too many, too deliberate. They camped on a ridge, wolves tense. Nira stood apart, listening. From the ravine rose chanting, harsh and wrong, bending sound into weapon. Pain lanced her skull. She dropped to her knees, gasping. Thorn was beside her instantly. "It's silence magic," Ophira said urgently. "They're corrupting it." Nira clenched her fists, fighting panic. "They're using fear to drown the song," she whispered. Thorn helped her stand. "Then we end it tonight," he said. Below them, Stonewake pulsed with dark intent. The confrontation they had tried to delay was ready, waiting, hungry. They descended under cover. Of darkness, warriors spreading wide. Nira moved with Thorn, heart hammering. At the ravine's center, Kalis stood before a ring of carved stones, hair loose, eyes blazing. When she saw Nira, her smile was feral. "You came," Kalis called. "I wondered if the little singer would hide behind her king." Nira stepped forward, voice steady despite shaking limbs. "You don't need to do this," she said. "The pack is changing." Kalis laughed, sharp and broken. "I am the pack," she snapped. "I was chosen." Thorn stepped beside Nira, power rolling off him. "You were," he said. "And you chose fear." Kalis's eyes burned with hate. She raised her hands, chanting louder. Silence crashed down like a wall. Wolves cried out, clutching ears. Nira felt her voice strangled, stolen. Panic surged. Then she remembered. Control, not force. She inhaled slowly and sang without sound, shaping intention, not noise. The ground shuddered. Cracks spidered through stone. Kalis screamed as the corrupted magic recoiled, tearing the ring apart. Sound rushed back like breath after drowning. The clash was brief and brutal. Loyalists fled or fell. Kalis collapsed to her knees, magic burned out, staring at Nira with hollow eyes. "You took everything," she whispered. Nira approached slowly, heart aching. "You gave it away," she replied. Thorn ordered Kalis bound, this time not in anger, but finality. As dawn broke over Stonewake Ravine, Nira felt exhaustion crash through her, but also clarity. She had faced the fear that hunted her bloodline and survived without becoming cruel. Thorn watched her with something deeper than love, trust forged in fire. The pack gathered, wounded but standing. Silence no longer ruled them. As they turned back toward Grimfall, Nira felt the song settle, no longer screaming, no longer hidden. It waited, patient, ready. The greatest test still lay ahead, not battle, but building what came after fear. Grimfall sovereignty received them in silence, the kind that followed truth spoken too loudly to ignore. Nira felt it as they crossed the gates, eyes watching, measuring, no longer mocking. The citadel seemed older somehow, stone carrying new weight. Kalis was taken below, her power gone, her voice small. Nira did not look back. Mercy did not mean forgetting. Inside the council chamber, elders waited, tense and wary. Thorn stood at the center, crown heavy on his brow. "Stonewake is ended," he announced. "The rites corrupted, there will never be practiced again." Murmurs followed, fear mixing with relief. Nira stepped forward before doubt could swell. "Ending one threat is not enough," she said quietly. "You built a world that fears voices. That world will keep birthing monsters." The words landed hard. Some bristled, others listened. Nira felt the song stir, not demanding release, but urging honesty. "Let me help rebuild," she said. "Not above you. With you." Thorn watched her, pride and worry colliding. This was not the ending of conflict. It was the beginning of change, and change always demanded sacrifice. The rebuilding began with resistance. Packs argued over borders, laws, traditions. Nira attended councils until her head ached, learning patience she had never been allowed before. She sang less now, choosing moments carefully. Each time she did, she felt the cost, but also the healing ripple outward. Children stopped crying at night. Old wounds eased. Still, shadows remained. Some wolves refused to attend councils where an Omega spoke. Others tested limits, provoking, waiting for punishment. Nira met cruelty with steadiness, not softness. When a group sabotaged food stores to force her hand, she did not sing them into obedience. She stood before them and spoke of hunger she had known, of survival without mercy. Her voice broke, but did not waver. The pack listened, shamed and changed. Thorn saw then how strength could look like, vulnerability without breaking. Their bond deepened, quiet and sure. At night they walked the ramparts together, planning, listening. No claims, no promises, only shared responsibility. The crown felt lighter when he remembered it was not his alone to bear. Trouble returned from the east as winter sharpened. Neighboring dominions sent envoys with thin smiles and sharper questions. "A singer among you?" they asked. "Is Grimfall weak now?" Thorn answered carefully, refusing displays. Nira felt the old fear stir, the urge to prove herself. She resisted. Instead, she invited the envoys to witness a council. They saw alphas argue and omegas speak. Warriors listen, healers lead. They left unsettled. Weeks later, scouts reported movements at the borders. War loomed, subtle and patient. Nira knew the song would be demanded again. She trained with Ophira, learning to anchor herself, to let sound pass through rather than burn her hollow. Thorn drilled the pack relentlessly, preparing for defense without cruelty. The night before the envoys returned, Nira sang alone on the plains, testing her limits. The land answered with quiet warmth, not fire. She smiled, exhausted but hopeful. Control was no longer fear's twin. It was her ally now. The envoys came with threats dressed as offers: submission, silence, compliance. Thorn listened, face unreadable. Nira felt the room tense, every breath a held blade. When the ultimatum ended, Thorn looked to her, not for permission, but partnership. Nira stepped forward. She did not sing at first. She spoke. "We will not erase ourselves to make you comfortable," she said simply. Murmurs rose. The envoy sneered. Then Nira sang, not to dominate, but to show. The melody carried images of unity forged without chains, strength multiplied by trust. The room stilled. Even the envoys felt it, eyes widening despite themselves. Nira ended the song before it could wound her. Silence followed, thick and honest. "This is who we are," she said. "Take it or leave us." The envoys left without another word. War did not come. Fear had met something it could not swallow. Thorn exhaled slowly, relief threading through tension. He took Nira's hand in front of everyone, not claim, not possession, a vow of equals. Winter settled, Grimfall's sovereignty endured. There were losses, mistakes, grief. There was also laughter returning to halls that had known only echo. Nira found moments of quiet joy, teaching children old songs, listening to elders admit regret, watching wolves heal without hiding. Thorn ruled differently now, asking before ordering, listening before striking. Together, they wrote new laws that named silence as choice, not weapon. On the longest night, Nira stood on the balcony and sang a final song of the year. Not for power, but gratitude. Thorn listened, heart full, knowing the crown no longer defined him. The song did not shake stone. It warmed it. Below, Grimfall listened, not because it had to, but because it wanted to. The world beyond still watched, wary and curious. Change had not ended danger. It had changed its shape. And Nira alone stood ready, voice steady, future open, no longer rejected, no longer a joke, but the sound of a kingdom learning how to live. The first scream came from the western watchtower just before dawn, sharp enough to rip sleep from bone. Nira was already awake. She felt it the moment the air shifted, the way the song recoiled inside her like a struck nerve. Thorn was on his feet instantly, sword in hand, eyes blazing. "They came anyway," he said. Horns sounded low and urgent. From the walls, fire bloomed against the dark as enemy shapes surged from the mist. Wolves bearing no banner, moving with disciplined silence. Not an invasion, an extraction. They were here for her. Nira's heart pounded, fear flaring hot and familiar. She pulled on her cloak and ran beside Thorn through corridors shaking with footfalls. Warriors clashed. Below, steel rang. Blood scented the air. At the central gate, a blast of silence magic detonated, dropping wolves to their knees. Nira stumbled, gasping, vision blurring. Thorn caught her, roaring orders. "Get her to the inner keep," someone shouted. Nira shook her head violently. "No," she said, forcing breath into her lungs. "If I hide, this never ends." She stepped forward, trembling but resolute as arrows thudded into stone. "They want the song," she said. "Then I decide how it's heard." They reached the high courtyard, where the enemy surged through shattered doors. Nira climbed the dais, as Thorn and the guard formed a ring around her. The attacker's leader stepped forward, hood falling back to reveal scarred features and cold certainty. "You will come with us," he said calmly. "Alive, if possible." Nira felt rage flare, controlled, focused. She lifted her chin. "You don't get to decide," she replied. She began to sing. Not loud, not sweeping, precise. The melody threaded between blades, unraveling the silence magic, knot by knot. Wolves staggered, disarmed by memories they had buried, children they once protected, oaths broken for coin. The leader snarled and struck, blade flashing. Thorn intercepted, steel ringing as they crashed together. Nira kept singing, shaping sound like a shield, reinforcing her defenders, steadying the wounded. Pain lanced her chest, but she held the line, refusing to burn out. Control, anchor, choice. The courtyard trembled as the song found its depth, not infinite, but enough. The leader broke free and lunged again, this time hurling a shard of silence straight at Nira. It slammed into her like ice. Her voice cut off. She collapsed, choking, darkness closing in. Thorn screamed her name and cut the man down in a blur of fury. Nira hit the stone hard, vision fading. The world narrowed to a single thought. Do not go quiet. From somewhere deep, her wolf rose, not roaring, but humming. Nira let go of fear and sang without sound again, intention blazing bright. The silence cracked. Air rushed back. She gasped, sound returning in a raw cry that surged outward. The remaining attackers fled, terror chasing them into the mist. Thorn dropped beside her, hands shaking as he pressed his forehead to hers. "Stay," he begged, voice breaking. Nira laughed weakly, tears streaking her temples. "I'm stubborn," she whispered. "You should know that by now." They carried her inside as dawn finally broke, painting the courtyard gold over blood and broken stone. Ophira worked quickly, hands glowing as she anchored Nira's frayed edges. "You walked the knife," the healer scolded through relief. "Don't do it again." Nira managed a nod. Thorn did not leave her side. News spread fast. Grimfall had held. The attackers were not a neighboring Dominion's army, but a hired force, paid by distant powers who feared the change Nira represented. Fear, it seemed, traveled farther than borders. As the sun climbed, leaders from allied packs arrived, drawn by smoke and resolve. They gathered in the council chamber, faces grim but impressed. Thorn spoke plainly, naming the attempt, the cost, the truth. Then he stepped aside. "She decides," he said, gesturing to Nira. The room stilled. Nira rose slowly, leaning on the dais, strength returning in waves. "This will keep happening," she said, "unless we answer together." She did not sing. She asked, "Will you stand with us?" One by one, alphas nodded, some reluctantly, some fiercely. It was not unity. It was alignment. Enough. That night, Grimfall burned its fallen with honor. Nira stood with Thorn as smoke rose into a clear sky, grief sharp but clean. She sang then, softly, a farewell that eased the ache without erasing it. Wolves howled in harmony, sound braiding with hers. Thorn felt tears trace his face, and did not hide them. He knew the crown would never be the same. Neither, would he? The attempt had failed, but the war of fear had only revealed itself fully now. Nira met his gaze, steady despite exhaustion. "We're not done," she said. Thorn squeezed her hand. "No," he agreed, "but neither are we alone." Above them, the stars burned cold and watchful. Below, a kingdom stood wounded but unbroken, having chosen its voice. The final test was coming, not of survival, but of what they would become, after victory demanded its price. The world did not end after the attack. That surprised everyone. Nira woke to quiet sunlight and the smell of clean linen, her body sore but whole. Outside her window, Grimfall sovereignty moved with purpose instead of panic. Repairs began. Councils formed without shouting. Children laughed again in the lower halls. Survival had turned into something rarer. Continuance. Thorn sat beside her bed, armor set aside, crown absent. He looked tired in a way power could not hide, but lighter too. "The allied packs stayed," he said softly. "They're helping rebuild the outer gates." Nira nodded, absorbing it. The song inside her was calm for the first time since the feast, not silent, just resting. "Fear won't vanish," she said, "but it learned it can bleed." Thorn smiled faintly. "And listen." He hesitated, then added, "I told them the truth, that Grimfall will never again hunt voices." Nira's chest tightened. For a moment she thought of her mother, of all the singers who never reached this morning. She closed her eyes and breathed, letting grief and gratitude exist together. This was what healing felt like. Uneven, real, earned. The final council gathered 3 days later under an open sky, stone seats arranged in a wide circle, no dais, no throne. Thorn stood when needed, then sat again. Nira took a place among elders, warriors, omegas, healers. The air was cool, the plains stretching endless beyond them. One by one, laws were spoken aloud and broken apart, then reshaped. Silence magic was outlawed completely. Councils would require voices from every rank, singers, if any emerged, would be protected, not owned. When it came time to name roles, murmurs stirred. Someone suggested a title for Nira, voice of the crown, binder of packs. Nira stood and shook her head. No titles, she said gently. I don't want a pedestal. I want a path. She looked around the circle, meeting eyes. Let my voice be a tool anyone can learn to use. Truth. The decision settled like stone placed carefully. Thorn watched her, pride fierce and clean. Leadership had shifted forever, not from king to queen, but from fear to trust. Grimfall's sovereignty exhaled as one. That evening, Nira walked alone to the edge of Silverhow Plains. The wind carried familiar scents, snow, grass, distant rain. Thorn followed at a respectful distance, waiting. She sang once, softly, a song for herself. No audience, no demand. The land responded with warmth, a low hum beneath her feet. When she finished, she laughed quietly, surprised by joy. Thorn joined her then. There's something I need to say, he began, then stopped, uncharacteristically unsure. Nira turned, smiling. You don't have to ask, she said, and you don't have to promise. Thorn swallowed. I choose you, he said simply. Not as king, as a wolf. Nira felt the bond rise, gentle and fierce, not claiming, not burning. She stepped closer and rested her forehead against his. I choose you too, she whispered. The bond sealed without pain, without spectacle, just alignment, just truth. The moon rose, bright and witness, not judge. Seasons passed. Stories traveled faster than armies ever had. Other dominions sent emissaries, not with threats, but curiosity. Some changes failed. Others took root. Nira traveled when needed, always returning. She taught songs to those who asked, silence to those who needed rest. Thorn ruled with open hands, no longer afraid to be challenged. Together they faced losses, made mistakes, corrected them. Love did not make ruling easy. It made it honest. One winter night, Nira stood again in Embercrest Feast Hall, the same place where laughter once cut her open. It was warmer now, banners repaired, faces open. At Thorn's request, she sang. Not grief, not power, a simple song of belonging. Wolves listened, tears shining, voices joining hers. No one laughed, no one mocked. The joke had died long ago, buried beneath truth. Years later, children would ask about the night the rejected Omega was asked to sing as a joke. Elders would smile and say, that was the night Grimfall learned to listen. Nira Eloan never forgot the cold stone beneath her bare feet, or the laughter that tried to make her small. She carried it, not as a wound, but as proof. Proof that dignity could survive humiliation, that power could kneel without breaking, that a voice meant to be silenced could change the shape of a kingdom. As the final note faded into the rafters, Nira met Thorn's gaze across the hall and smiled. The Alpha King rose, not above her, but beside her, and together they faced a future no longer ruled by fear, but by choice, song, and the courage to hear one another clearly at last. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one. Share your thoughts in the comments. What moment stayed with you the most, and why? Your support helps these stories reach more people who need them. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep listening to the stories that change us.